east coast of Scotland, a criminally underrated piece of our planet for sure. Its intoxicating environment has you hooked within minutes. It's a feast for the eyes, a feast where seconds feels like a necessity. It's home to some stunning scenery, with the inclusion of cities such as Aberdeen and Inverness, and a wonderful array of wildlife. There truly is no shortage of beauty here. However, there's no shortage of problems either. Alas, one of which is the recent dent in the population of East Coast seabirds. So, that begs the question, what exactly is eradicating our avian community? Allow me to explain. Back around mid-September 2021, birdwatchers and beachgoers of the east coast of Scotland began finding hundreds of unconscious seabirds in their respected habitat. Guillemots and razorbills were quite literally falling from the skies. Malnourished or dead, they were simply unable to move. Cases were even reported as far up as Orkney. Mass confusion plagued experts in the field, and bird charities alike as they desperately searched for a cause. Skies were becoming scarce, and naturally the SSPCA and charities alike were receiving an unusual amount of calls regarding the issue at hand. Upon examination of several different species and cases, it was uncovered that they were dying of starvation. Despite certain factors such as overfishing, avian influenza, and poisonous algal blooms posing as familiar foes to the population of seabirds, they were ruled out by experts as the main reason for their recent mass demise. I decided to travel and search for the answers I was so desperately looking for. My search led me to the Scottish Highlands, in particular, a small village of about 2,000 people. A village by the name of Brora. It was here that I was meant to meet with a very special individual. Lady Hadassah Broskova Saranak Ragetti, an expert in all things avian.
I'm the founding director of BlueHighlands Bird Rescue. Essentially, we have a three-armed program. The first arm is dedicated to emergencies. So any bird of any variety, endemic or non-endemic to the UK, comes in 24-hour day crisis centre, and whether they're abuse victims coming in via the police department or SSPCA, or a bird that's washed up on the shore or being mauled by a dog, whatever the situation, we take a bird in any crisis, and we are a full rehabilitation centre. So even if it takes months, and it often does, for a bird to get better, we provide what they need for their recovery and rehabilitation and wild release. The second is an educational arm. So things like this, raising awareness in general about the things that affect our beautiful national avian heritage. Those things are addressed often in a public forum or via videos and things like this, in order to hopefully raise awareness as to the things that are causing the impact to the environment and therefore to the birds themselves, and whether they're natural or man-made, and what we can do about it. The third is rather near and dear to my heart, is called Encore. And Encore is the arm of our program which focuses upon extinct in the wild and endangered or critically endangered birds. It's a captive breeding program wherein the birds that find themselves in those situations are entered into the program. They're closely watched and monitored so that specialised, what you would call perhaps stud books, are kept upon them so that all of their genetic diversity is preserved as much as possible. So those are the three arms of our program, and of course the emergency intake arm has taken up a lot more of our resources and time than it ever has, and in no small part due to the recent crises facing our avian community, shall we say.
BlueHighlands Bird Rescue Centre, like many other charities and rescue centres, was at the forefront of this catastrophe.
Last August, it was 31 years. Adversely. I think the greater question is how is it affecting the birds, because essentially we have lost an entire generation, certainly of the guillemots, and other species have been profoundly affected as well. In our case, the great difficulty for us was that we were just coming to the end of chick season, we call it colloquially, the chick season, which is when you get the annual glut of birds, very young birds, disturbed nests, felled trees, this sort of thing, babies, fledglings that have been hit by vehicles, motor vehicles and things like this. So at the end of that part of the season, where hundreds of birds come in and have to be rehabilitated and raised and successfully released, there's a level of exhaustion that comes with that, and we were just coming to the end of that annual crisis that we gear up for every year, when the juvenile guillemots started rolling up onto the seashores by their 5s, their 10s, and in some cases we have photographic evidence of them coming up in 100 or more at a time, all of them the same age, all of them in excellent fare, almost every single one of them in excellent fare. They clearly have been well taken care of by the parents, and all of them within a 3-week age group. So all of them juveniles, and then their situation was an acute case of starvation. So they were unable to find the food that they needed, and we're so desperate, in fact, that there are reports of them having travelled up rivers, which is entirely out of their natural ecosystem, up freshwater rivers as far as 20 miles in order to find the food that they needed. Risking themselves in freshwater. They're not freshwater birds. And so the glut of birds that came in created a temporary crisis for us, because we had to come up with emergency shelter, build entirely new creches just to accommodate this particular species, and a few of the others. There were also puffins and others that were adversely affected, but it was the vast majority was the guillemot population which was affected. In this particular case, it is our belief that there is at least one contributing factor that has had a devastating effect and could easily be addressed by a public outcry, by a letter writing campaign, by raising awareness, as you're doing just now. And that would be to address the actual contributing forces that made this happen. This algaic bloom that has happened, that is getting so much attention just now, is a brand new thing. This particular crisis, this particular symptom, isn't, in my opinion, the cause. This is a symptom, and it's a symptom of an immediately addressable problem, and that problem is the water treatment. Suddenly, as a result of the inability to get quick and ready service via our lorries internationally, we are suffering a crisis in this country of having the necessary chemicals to address the effluents of sewage and other contaminated waters that must be treated. There's a certain level of cleanliness that the water has to achieve, and that is done by having the appropriate amount of chemicals to treat that water. And without that, in the absence of those chemicals ready availability, we're now seeing water being discharged that is not fully treated, and an algaic bloom, in my humble opinion, is the least of our concerns, least of our worries. That optimism has been fading, if I'm entirely honest. For the guillemot in particular, we're not very hopeful. We think that if drastic and immediate action is not taken to prevent these things from recurring this year, we're going to see this redoubled. The answer is simple. It may not be easy, but it is simple. And for that reason, and that reason alone, I think it should be addressed. I realise there are people that will say, well, we're in Brexit and we can't just undo it. I'm not asking for it. It's not a political commentary. I'm not interested in trying to undo something. All I'm saying is that this is an emergent situation, and I am absolutely certain that any thinking person, any person with common sense can look at the situation and say, yes, we need to have an emergency meeting and an emergency accord with our neighbouring countries who may also be affected adversely by contaminated water and therefore contaminated fish, and all their sea life or bird avian life also being affected adversely. I think many other countries would also see that it is in their best interest to have water treated properly and in an effective and proper manner. I think there are many lawmakers and others that simply just don't know. They're not aware that we directly have affected. We have been the contributing factor. This treatment of water alone absolutely is a contributing factor. That can be reversed before the next breeding season, because at this point we're on a 9-month countdown. What happened this year is nothing compared to what will happen if it isn't addressed. So I have hope this time. I have hope because there's actually something that can be done if people are of the mind to address it.